for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR FM 89.
Welcome to Arkansas Week. I'm Christina Munoz. A legislative session is on the horizon and a trigger law has outlawed most abortions in Arkansas. We'll talk about those today with a very special guest, Governor Asa Hutchinson. Governor, thank you so much for being with us today.
Great to be with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
And we have a lot to get to, so we are going to get straight to it. So first, this special session, we've been talking about it for a while now. So what is the latest information on when this might actually happen?
Well, and you're correct. We have been discussing it for some time. Before you call a special session, which is the authority of the governor to do that, you want to make sure that there's broad agreement on what we need to do with the General Assembly. And so I've been meeting with the leadership of the General Assembly, talking to members, trying to arrive at the right approach, because what we're trying to do is simply to put more money in people's pockets so that as they face higher energy costs, gas prices, inflation, that they have more spendable income, and we're actually collecting more in revenue for the state than we need to collect to provide the services. So we want to be able to return that to them. So we just trying to arrive at an agreement on exactly the right approach. I put out some other ideas of things that we can use with our historic surplus in revenue, but the legislature understandably wants to save many of these items for next year. So we're still trying to reach an agreement. The things we've talked about are tax cuts to put more money in people's pockets. I raised the issue of teacher pay that needs to be addressed now or down the road. And then we have the most recent issue with the reversal of Roe versus Wade and what needs to be done to help on adoption services to make sure that we're providing as a state the support for maternal health needs that might increase as a result of this decision.
Very good, and we're going to get into all of that in just a moment. But when you talk about more money in the pockets of Arkansans, that is good news for everybody in the state and everybody watching and listening in. Talk about what your desired plan would be for that. Is it to speed up the tax cuts already in progress?
That's correct. Right now, we have a 5.3% tax rate that's been reduced for individuals from originally at 7%. So we've already reduced it dramatically. But we also have a plan that the legislature passed to reduce it over time down to 4.9%, and this would be like in 2026. So the plan would be simply to accelerate that reduction so that it could take effect this year. People could adjust their withholding tables and again have more money in their pockets this year. That's the objective, and there is broad consensus that that's a good plan. There were other ideas out there, but that's the simplest. We can afford to do that. And right now, we're closing out the year with $1.6 billion surplus. And so we have sufficient reserves that we can make sure we can continue to provide services that are needed and still accelerate the reduction of those tax cuts.
Very good. And so we're going to move over to Roe v. Wade, as you have already mentioned. The trigger law that took effect in Arkansas on the day that the Roe v. Wade was reversed has been called one of the most restrictive abortion laws when it comes to these state laws that are out there. How does that make you feel when you hear that's kind of the assessment going on?
Well, anytime that you can save lives of the unborn, that you can shift our culture into more pro-life protections, then that's a very good thing, and I rejoice in that. Whenever you look at the fact that I've been engaged in the political arena for over 30 years, and through that time we've talked about the reversal of Roe versus Wade, that it was wrongly decided, that the authority on these public health matters should be reserved to the states under our Constitution. All of a sudden, the Supreme Court agreed with that. And so that's a big victory for the pro-life movement, for protecting unborn. you know, what we want to also address, and this is not something that's new. All of a sudden we say, well, because we're going to put restrictions on abortion, that somehow we're waking up and that we need to do more for adoption services or maternal health care. We started this some time ago, and we've enhanced our coverage. We've expanded Medicaid coverage in Arkansas, but we always need to do more, particularly with the increased number that will likely be seeking these services. So it's a good day. Obviously, it's going to be filled with controversy. There's going to be other states that take different directions, and I might not agree with every aspect of the law, but it does protect life, and that's why I signed that law the last session.
And you mentioned other states that may be going down different roads, and we have one senator, Senator Jason Rapert, that has already talked about the possibility of making it difficult for someone to get an abortion in another state. Do you support those concepts or those ideas?
Yeah, I don't, and the reason is that we have a Constitution to follow, and as the conservative Supreme Court recited in their opinion, I think they almost anticipated that argument and said, this doesn't mean there should be restrictions on our freedom to travel. And so people all across the United States, you know, we have people that are traveling to health care out of states for various reasons, and I don't see a constitutional basis for restricting the freedom to travel, even though it might be traveling for a purpose that's not supporting the policy of Arkansas. And so I don't see that as constitutional. I think the Supreme Court of the United States indicated that as well. We're going to have time to adjust to this. And so let's focus on, now that abortion is very restricted in Arkansas, let's make this successful in terms of adoption alternatives, services that provided, greater education. It's going to take some resources to do that. And I think that's the most important direction that we can take.
And I'm curious to know about enforcement of this. We're talking about anyone who performs or attempts to provide an abortion with up to a $1,000 fine and or prison time of up to 10 years. Where does enforcement of this new law fall?
Well, it's very important to remember that, first of all, any penalties are not directed at the woman. All the penalties are to the abortion provider that might violate the law. And it is a felony, includes a fine, as you noted. And the law is enforced just like any other law, so that if a complaint is filed that somebody is not following it, it's referred to the prosecuting attorney or a law enforcement agency that would do an investigation and determine whether there is a law that's violated and whether charges should be filed. I'm pleased that since the decision came down and since Attorney General Leslie Rutledge certified that the law is now triggered that puts these restrictions in place, that we have information that our traditional abortion provider here in Arkansas has complied with the law, have ceased the abortions for those instances which would not be in compliance. And so we expect people to follow the law. If we have complaints that that's not the case, then it'll be handled just like any other violation of the law.
So you mentioned that it may not be perfect. It is what it is right now, and it does have an exception for the life of the mother, but none for rape or incest. And I'm curious to know how you feel about that, as well as when we get into in vitro fertilization, reproductive rights, and things of those nature. What can you tell us about the Arkansas law with regard to those topics?
Well, I have historically supported the exceptions of rape and incest because the conception is based upon a criminal act. And I certainly agree that these are hard cases because you've got many times a young woman that's involved, that's the victim of this. And our answer should be that we're going to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law the perpetrator. Secondly, we want to provide services and help as much as we can through those difficult circumstances. While I would have preferred those exceptions to be in place, that was clearly not the will of the General Assembly, and so the law recognizes one exception, which is the life of the mother. And so we're going to do all we can to protect the life of both the mom and the unborn child, and that's the public policy of Arkansas that's broadly accepted, so we're going to do that. The other part of your question is about all of the other what-ifs. I think it's really important just simply to make a distinction. When it comes to contraceptive services, there is no ban in Arkansas. I fully support that. The legislature fully supports the contraceptives. Is not touched based upon this recent decision and the trigger law. If it is an abortion services, then that is impacted by it. And so you have to make those two distinctions. And women should be assured that they're going to have access to contraceptive services as they always have. We want to be able to support that. It's just simply the prohibitions on taking that life of the unborn.
Well, Governor, as your time starts to wind down as governor of the state, I want to say thank you for your time and service. I know it was probably not what you envisioned when you get a global pandemic while you happen to be leader of this state. So thank you for all you have done, and thank you for your time here today.
It's great to have the conversation with you, and we look forward to continue serving out the rest of my term with a lot of energy. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. Next up, we'll talk with attorney Bettina Brownstein to get a pro-choice perspective on what the new abortion law means for Arkansas women. Welcome back. Our next guest is an attorney who has worked extensively with ACLU Arkansas, Bettina Brownstein. Bettina, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start just with a little bit of reaction in legal terms. What has been your reaction to the legal status now of abortion in Arkansas?
Well, legally, it couldn't be worse if for a woman who's seeking to get an abortion for any other reason other than to save her own life.
It is. It's been called one of the more extensive measures when it comes to all the states and who's doing what right now with reaction to Roe versus Wade being overturned. And so I'm curious if you can tell us what it means mostly with regard to the law. If someone tried having an abortion or doing an abortion in Arkansas, what would happen?
Well, Arkansas's law among all the states is as restrictive, as prohibitive, as much of a ban as any other anti-abortion or abortion ban law in the country. So it absolutely bans an abortion for any reason other than to save the life of the mother. And to save the life of the mother means physical life. If the mother has psychological distress, mental distress, is even suicidal, that's not a reason under this law to permit an abortion. So Arkansas's ban is virtually a complete ban.
Okay, so let's get into...
What it means for women seeking an abortion is you're going to have to go out of state or find a way to get an abortion that is not going to be discovered by prosecutors or who may attempt to enforce this law.
Or otherwise face legal ramifications for sure. And so I'm curious to know, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of questions, a lot of concern about some other types of procedures like ectopic pregnancies, D&C with regard to miscarriage. What can you tell Arkansans and Arkansas women about those kinds of procedures moving forward?
First of all, I do want to clarify something. Under the Act 180, women are not to be criminally held liable, are not to be prosecuted criminally. At least as of now, the woman seeking an abortion does not face criminal liability. It is the ones who are assisting her to get an abortion or provide an abortion who would be facing criminal penalties up to $100,000 and or 10 years in prison. So to answer your question, the law itself, the act itself, says that an ectopic pregnancy is not considered a pregnancy for abortion, so that the law would be, if you have an ectopic pregnancy, a doctor would be permitted to abort that fetus in that case. Although There's certain, even though the law I think is fairly clear in that regard, there's so much fear generated by this law among people who provide abortions or doctors who may be confronted with a woman with a medical condition who is pregnant, that there is so much fear that there is going to be a lot of hesitancy to do procedures to improve or save the health of the mother, even though it might be permitted under the law, that won't be done by medical providers, simply because of fear, because the penalties are so draconian. I think I answered part of your question, not the entire question, if you want to repeat it.
As far as miscarriage or D&C goes, sometimes those are categorized under abortion.
It's the same, it would be the same problem. Although under the law, if you're not intending to abort a fetus, or you don't reasonably think that what you're doing could have consequences to a fetus, and it's then arguably you would have a defense to any prosecution for performing a miscarriage, treating a miscarriage or other treatment. But then again, there's that area of uncertainty, and there's that fear of zealousness by some prosecutors and by state legislators who will, promote prosecution for this kind of incidents, that makes the medical provider fear for what I think would be and prevent them and interfere with them doing what would be in the best interest of the mother, health-wise.
And as we begin to wrap up here, do you anticipate or see, when you look down the road and into the future, either a change in that state law, if there's a change in leadership, and or at the federal level, if a federal law could come into play? How does that work for the states?
A federal law trumps state law. If the Congress were to pass a law that made it a right for women to have an abortion, I don't know exactly what that law would look like, but if they did, then of course that would trump state law, and so women in Arkansas would be permitted to have an abortion. Well, now, as far as state law is concerned, I don't see anything time soon, any changes in our state law. I do think that if women have to be concerned about this, of course. Women have to be outraged about it, I think. They're taking away this very, very fundamental right of women to decide when to have a child or if to have a child, which is so integral to being a woman, being a citizen in this country. I think women, we have to change the people who are elected in this state. That's the only way we're going to make changes in the abortion law. I think it's absolutely vital that we elect people who do not allow religion to dictate the laws for women. And I believe that's what's happening here. It's in my opinion, it's a fundamentalist Christian and Catholic theology that is taking precedence over health and the rights of women in this state.
Well, no doubt a conversation that will continue for years to come, but I want to say a special thank you to Ms. Brownstein. Thank you so much for joining us today. We very much appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And now we'll end the show with something sweet, as Good Roots takes us to Barnhill Orchards, Bemis Honeybee Farms, and Bernice Garden Farmers Market.
The sweet life of small, family-owned businesses. That's our topic today. There's nothing quite as sweet as an Arkansas strawberry in peak season. I'm Lauren McCullough. In this next episode of Good Roots, we travel to Lonoke County and pick berries with an Arkansas farming legend, Mr. Bob Barnhill.
The customer with us is always right.
We'll discuss family, community, and what keeps him so motivated. Then the sweetness continues as we head to a honeybee farm where a couple has made it their mission to educate the public about bees. Let's go see if I can find Mr. Barnhill.
How are y'all? I'm good. What can I get y'all today? I am Tori Barnhill, and I'm at the corner market today selling some strawberries. Would y'all like this in the back or up here with you? Here at Barnhill Orchards, we are family owned and operated. My dad, Rex, he is the farmer here at Barnhill Orchards, and my Aunt Echo, she is in charge of all the communications and sales. My grandfather, people ask about him all the time. He sets up the table, he sells to customers, and everyone just looks for the old man with the blue hat.
$16. Well, back in February, Dad turned 90, and he still got the desire and the want to. I can't keep him out of town. He just loves to go to town, but he's still the boss. This all started back in 1980. He retired out of the Air Force, and we've been farming ever since. The popularity of the strawberry here in Arkansas has risen quite a bit, and to me, it's the quality of the berry that we're producing in this area. It's much better than something you're going to buy in a grocery store. It's dead ripe, ready to eat, best you ever put in your mouth. Plus, the local communities support us. They're realizing the value of it. And of course, I'm here to support them.
All right, Mr. Barnhill, is that about right?
Yes, it looks good.
A little
you
more?
want to be sure to heap them up because the customers like to have a real full basket.
So what makes the perfect strawberry?
Perfect strawberry wants to be picked when it's deep colored red. We pick the strawberries every other day. We pick half the field one day and the other half the next day. Now it has very little shelf life. You've got to pick it, sell it, they've got to take it home and eat it in a matter of 3 days.
Why strawberries?
Strawberries sell well. People like to have them, and they will come to the farm to get them. It really feels good to have a product that somebody wants.
Do you want to know my favorite way to eat strawberries?
With chocolate?
No, I literally like to stand over the kitchen sink and just go like this.
Oh, okay. You know, eating over the sink or the stove, they say, is very fattening. But of course, that doesn't bother you. But it does me.
Well, to each their own. These are so delicious. Now, we can't talk about Arkansas strawberries without mentioning their ideal pollinator, perhaps their #1 pollinator, which you could say are community-minded.
I'm Emily Bemis here with my husband Jeremy Bemis at Bemis Honeybee Farm in southeast Little Rock.
What got us into honeybees is we bought the property and there was actually an airport on it, and obviously we did not want to own an airport. So this building actually used to be an airplane hangar. We decided we were going to do Christmas trees, and if you do Christmas trees you need to have a pumpkin patch. So the #1 reason why pumpkins don't grow is not enough pollinators. The easiest thing to do is to get some bees and have some bees to pollinate the pumpkins.
Which I was not on board with.
Oh, so she's actually allergic to honeybees.
He decided we probably need to start selling some supplies. We have the space to do it, and then we quickly realized we need education as well. So we started with some beginner classes.
Education is the most important thing with bees. After you get your bees and you start learning and reading some more, you realize how little you really know. So the better the educated beekeeper, the better the bees.
You notice the bees aren't all antsy and everything?
We also have a wood shop where we build a lot of our own supplies. So we try to do as much as we can here and offer all things beekeeping to anybody looking to get started.
So Jeremy, we're out in the workshop at the farm. What are we going to do today?
Today we're going to build boxes. So this is your standard Langstroth box, and this is the frame. So this is what we're actually building, is the box that these frames will fit into.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead. Don't hit my finger.
What good are bees doing for nature?
They're responsible for pollinating a large percentage of our food source. Fruits and a lot of vegetables, things like that, are pollinated by bees. So if we don't have them, then we're really not going to have all that. The honeybee is not native to the U.S., so the native bees actually do a much better job of pollinating our crops than the honeybee does. What has happened is, with our crop structure that we have miles and miles of different crops, soybeans, cotton, whatever it may be. The honeybee is the only insect that will travel as far as it will to pollinate those crops. So a native bee, if it goes 100 yards away from the nest, that's a long ways away. Whereas a honeybee could go up to 3 miles away from its hive. So when you get a crop that needs to be pollinated, you can put a bunch of honeybees in there and they'll just keep going and going and going. And we get food from them. So the honeybee is the only insect that we get food from.
And it needs a frame, right?
Well, it'll take 10 of these. So this actually holds 10 frames.
So this is it.
As long as that fits in there, then you've done it right.
And the next time you pull this out, it's full of beautiful golden honey and honeycomb, right?
Yes.
I'm at the Bernice Garden Farmers Market in the South on Main district of Little Rock for the first of a series that we would like to call the Farmers Market Roundup. Farmers markets like this are a place where farmers and artisans can come together and sell their goods directly to the consumers.
I'm Amanda Isbell. I'm the events coordinator and manager of the Bernice Garden, this beautiful botanical garden and sculpture garden surrounding our farmers market. You can find local produce, handcrafted goods, you can find body products, all from local artisans, local vendors, local growers and producers. It's important to the farmers to have their community support, and we also feel like it's great for the community to have the farmer support. Connecting people, connecting local produce, the freshest products, and the best experience.
15 varieties of heirloom tomatoes.
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been coming here?
This is actually my first year, but it's been like a small family, and I really appreciate them here.
I love the farmers markets. Being that I work for myself and I only have one employee, I don't get to interact, especially during, the pandemic. I like getting out and socializing a little bit. I'm also really proud of what I'm doing, and it feels really good when people come and tell me what they've made and they really enjoy them.
I've been coming here for a couple years now. We have a really vibrant farmers market scene this year. I mean, we've got a lot of produce, we have a lot of producers.
Farmers markets facilitate a personal bond and connection between the farmers, the shoppers, and the community. The atmosphere at Bernice Garden just makes it that much more special. Until next time, I'm Lauren McCullough, and this is Good Roots.
And that is our show for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Christina Munoz. We'll see you next week on Arkansas Week. Good night.
Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR FM 89.